Hi there, I'm David.
And I'm Con. Welcome to another episode of Camera Peeps. David, once again, what are we talking about today?
Light meters, and I've got to say on behalf of a lot of people out there, I don't use one and I don't own one, and if I was put under the pump, I possibly... Anyhow, I won't go any further, but you are going to tell us all about them.
Yep, I've had light meters for a long time, and my first light meter, which I think I made a mistake, was buying one of these. I think this is the Minolta spot meter right here. And the reason I think I made a mistake buying this one first was because I didn't know how to use it properly.
Okay.
It took me years to understand how to use it. And I probably would have been better off buying an incident meter like this one, which the late great John Bowring recommended I buy this one. It's nice and simple. It's a Spectra 4. And served me well for a long time. And I only used them when I was shooting the odd short film on 16mm, and I did a low budget feature too, actually, and they came in handy that. But then the whole world went digital, and like a lot of people, I abandoned my meters.
Yeah.
Because, coming mostly from a video world like you, I used to expose the video cameras with Zebras,
yeah.
Or waveform monitors, which weren't popular back then. Like now, you've got waveform monitors on your Atomos, your monitors now.
Well, early on with my career, I've always been video with work.
Yeah.
But the stills, the film days, it was pretty much the Pentax K1000, just with the
built-in light meter.
So you would just point the camera around, trying to find the hot spot, and you would just sort of guess. Sort of roughly where it was, and then it wasn't really worth investing the money because they were expensive.
They weren't cheap. That's right.
For stills, which are basically for holidays. I wasn't.
That's right. Yeah. I think this one cost me 20 or 25 years ago, $1,500.
Wow. Okay.
That was a lot of money.
And there was also, was there a light meter that would do, film and video, because we're working f-stops, not t-stops in the video world. Yeah. So look, I think I just put it in the too hard basket, and I just made do with the Zebras, and that's what I was brought up on. And then, as the video cameras progressed, we had options to have two Zebras at the same time. We had the Zebra. We could set one for, at 100% or 99%
for your whites,
and one at
skin
70.
tone.
Yeah. So I tended to just go with one because the viewfinder got very busy.
Yeah. Stripes going that way and then that way, and you always try to remember now which ones were the 100% or which ones were the
exactly. Anyhow, so clear it all up for us, Con.
All right. Well, once I bought this meter, actually, when I understood how to use my spot meter, I did a Kodak training course with Donald Strine. Kodak brought him over and he did a film workshop. And the way he said he used his spot meter was, you take your incident reading, so 800 ASA, 25 frames, f4 and a third. So that's what you would expose to. Then what he would do, and I immediately took to it like a duck to water, he would find something in the frame. Let me just clear this meter. He would find something that would give him that exposure. So, and then he would hit the average button, and that locks in that aperture, and then he'd go by the camera and go, right, that window 6 stops over, that shadow over there's 4 stops under. And back then when we were shooting film, you used to know film stocks, depending if it was 200 ISA, that you could get away with 2 stops under, and then you lose detail, or if it's 500 ISA, you go 2.5, 3 stops, and then after that, so you'd then start telling your gaffer, I want detail in that shadow, put in more light, or let's ND that window because it's going to blow out. But film was more forgiving, obviously, in highlights.
Yes.
I moved away from light meters when we went all digital, and I mostly found myself shooting, in the video world. But of recent times, with all this 35mm shooting and log shooting, I've really forced myself to come back to my meters. And I've ended up buying this brand new Sekonic L-A58D light meter, and it's both incident meter. I've got the ball here hidden. So it's an incident meter which you read from the subject pointing to the light source or to the camera, and a spot meter. So yeah, it's the first time I've owned a combined meter, incident and spot meter, and it's really
what sort
good.
of money are we talking about?
I think this was about $1,000,
Okay.
but considering you're getting 2 meters in one, it's pretty good.
Okay, so once again, so from someone who doesn't generally work with a light meter, if
Yep.
I was to purchase that, how much time would I need to invest in doing the research on?
There are very good tutorials on the Sekonic website that show you how to use light meters.
So it's not as scary as...
It's not as scary. Basically, all the 3 things you've got to need to know is what your frame rate is, what your ISO is, and what shutter angle you use. Once you input that, you take a meter
and given
reading.
all that information's on the side of the F5, whatever anyhow.
Exactly, and these days the cameras actually tell you what their ISO is. In the old Digibeta days, no one told you how sensitive. I think from memory, someone did the test and calibration.
I think we used to just read the blurb when the camera was new. It'd say f8 at 2000 lux or something.
Which
and
means
you just
what?
Quote, I know, you would just quote that down the pub.
Yeah.
And we really didn't know.
No, but these days the cameras actually tell you what the ISO are. I think the Digibeta from memory was around about 350 ISO.
And then Sony would bring out a new CCD block, and it was slightly better.
Slightly better, yeah.
So.
So now that the video cameras actually tell you what the ISO is, it's very easy to use your light meter again. And the thing too is, although we can use our false color, our waveforms, our histograms, and our zebras, this is still the most accurate way of judging exposure. Not only that, it allows you to really think about your lighting. I find, and now that I'm forcing myself to get back into using meters, I'm finding now it doesn't matter what camera I'm shooting with, I feel confident about getting exposure, because you know how each camera has its own quirks or regarding exposure. You don't have to second guess yourself. And you know what? Waveform monitors are open to interpretation too, where you set your levels and stuff. So I'm also thinking a lot of times now that I'm using the meter about my ratio. So I get my key light, whatever.
Well, we've done that here.
Yeah, we've done that here. And, we had a bit of a break and we've come back after 4 weeks, and we had to set up the lights again. And we had actually written down what all the light levels were. So you're able to recreate your lighting exactly to the 10th of a stop if you so choose. So, so I'm thinking more about my lighting ratios, and I'm able to get consistent ratios on my shadow side, and matching it on the reverse camera angle. So it's really putting me in a headspace where I can really think about the lighting, and I'm really enjoying that. And I'm taking it to recce's a lot too, so I can see what the ambient light levels are, how much more lighting I need to bring in or not.
Well, it's also a form of, say, in the music world, if you're studying music, at the piano you do your scales, you practice.
That's right.
So taking that with you everywhere you go, it's a form of practicing.
And I think a carpenter or a plumber or an electrician has their tools of trade. This is our tool of trade, the cinematographer's tool of trade. So I think you look the part when you have one of these on set. So just to show you what else I have in my lighting kit, I've always wanted to have one of these analog, light meters. They're the Sekonic Studio Deluxe 2s. Ever since I had an interest in cinematography, I used to see these a lot, and I go, one day I'll own one of this. It was very hard to find. I went in 2015 to Cinegear, and I went to the famous Film Tools store where they sell lots of film gear, and I saw that in the cabinet there. I go, right.
So that's vintage.
Well, I think they still make them.
Oh, okay, right on.
If you want to buy one, you can still make them. I think they're made in the Philippines now.
Okay.
And the beauty about this is it doesn't require battery. And I remember, John Seal saying when he shot Gorillas in the Mist that he took one of these as well as his regular meter, because these need batteries, and this one in particular has some weird 3 volt battery, whereas this one works on a selenium cell that doesn't need a battery. So he figured, you know, if I'm in the middle of the jungle and the last thing I want is my battery to
also,
die.
well, condensation in the tropical climates can affect
Electronics, that's right. So, so it's a real classic. Also, another thing which I don't tend to use anymore was this Kodak Cinematographer's Guide. So if you want to look up, you know, certain stocks and stuff, that was a good reference. When we did that Donald Strine course, we got one of these calculators, so you can actually work out if you measured your foot candles and your shutter angle, what f-stop. Yeah, so it's a handy little thing which I don't use much anymore, but a little trivia. I also keep a gel pack. In there if you want to look up a quick filter. These are the filters that go with the Studio Deluxe meter. So if you go outside and it's too bright, you can put these slides on the back on the back head just to attenuate the level going into this cell. And there's a chart there that tells you which one to use or how much compensation for exposure you then use on the dial.
But I guess these work with the electronic viewfinders in a way, because I mean, if there's a setting if this isn't calibrated properly, it will be obvious in the viewfinder if the viewfinder's calibrated properly.
That's right. And we used to tend to try and, you know, calibrate our meters with someone else's to see, you know, are they both the same or are they out? And I just actually calibrated my new one with the old one, and with the flat disc on this one, I was able to get the same thing. So I can feel confident that this one is reading accurately. And I think with this one, when I read the blurb on their website, you can actually calibrate it to your particular sensor. Yeah, I think you do some readings and input it into some software, and it'll plug it in with a USB thing. It talks to the software, and you can actually save profiles for certain cameras.
Now, I saw on some old footage, very old footage of some classic Hollywood stuff behind the scenes where they were taking light readings, but the DOP was calling out to the guys up in the grid to spot and flood. So they take the reading under the spot and then say, okay, flood it. So what would...
Well, I'm not really sure. I think the only thing is intensity. Obviously, when you spot things, you got more firepower. Maybe by way of saying flood it is a way because they can't move the light if it's in the grid, and maybe they didn't have diffusion or nets.
Or it may have been something to do with the Technicolor process or something as well.
Yeah. So another handy thing I keep in my DP kit is these director's viewfinders. So they're still useful. I mean, it's obviously more accurate to have a proper director's viewfinder with the actual lenses that you're using on there. But for again on a recce, although these days I find myself on recce's, I'm using the Artemis app a lot.
Yeah, I've got that one as well. Yeah, it's a really good app.
Yeah, so I can take photos and keep a record of the location and so forth. So the main idea of showing you all this is to show you the history of light meters and that how I believe they're still important, and we all need to learn how to use them again as cinematographers, especially now that the cameras actually tell you what their ISO are, and the whole craft of cinematography and lighting, because it's not all just about shallow depth of field, it's also about understanding and learning lighting. I'm sure you would agree. So,
absolutely. Well, we don't always want shallow depth of field. Sometimes we do want deeper focus.
Exactly. So
this is actually not a bad case study here.
Yeah.
That our cameras are super 35 sensors. Yes. This camera taking the wide shot is a 230-inch sensor.
Yep.
But we actually want deeper focus because we want this in focus and we want the TV in focus.
Right. That's right.
If that was a super 35,
we'd be struggling. We'd have to pump in more light in here and stop down. And
so the shallow depth of field isn't the ultimate technique.
No, it doesn't make you a cinematographer just by achieving shallow depth of field. Yeah. One last thing I will talk about is my old Minolta color meter. Now, I never used to use this a lot, but a lot of gaffers used to have them, and probably still do, just to measure their HMIs to see how old their bulbs are and if they're changing.
That's a good point, that one.
Yeah. And the beauty about this one is it also told you what filters to use. If the light had green, it'd tell you to use a color compensating 2 magenta, And on the back there's a chart that relates to the type of filter to use either in the camera or as a minus green or plus green. These days I'm using the Sekonic Spectrometer C-700, which again I picked up at Cine Gear on my trip there in 2015 at Film Tools.
Yes.
And yeah, the beauty about this, it tells you the CRI, and you know, if I take a measurement on this light, we get 96.1. Are they
Aladdin's?
Aladdin's, yeah. And it tells me, you know, the CRI. I can also go into other settings.
Can I just interrupt there, because the CRI is different with the color temperatures. That's not consistent
That's
all the way
right.
through. When we did our test, it was different at 3200.
That is correct. And I've got all these other modes, camera filters, spectrum, so it shows me the spectrum of the light. There's a lot of blue because it's daylight. So it's very handy. So these are, this and this meter now are my two main meters. So an incident spot meter and a color meter. And you know, I think I think we have to come back to being precise and scientific about the way we measure light. Obviously, I don't use them all the time if I'm doing run and gun stuff, but where I've got time and control, I do want to use my meters again.
So if we watch this video and we go, well, look, he makes some good points, I will go and grab a light meter. Are we talking, can we get them second hand on eBay? Can we get them second hand, or should I go and buy the brand new latest one?
My personal feeling is buy brand new, but if you can't afford brand new, Sekonic do make a cheaper version, almost a student version of the light meter, which is very similar in interface, but is not a spot meter, and I think that's only $500, $400. But yes, obviously you can buy meters second hand, but my personal preference is, you know, I want to know.
But it's one of those tools, like we've talked about, certain pieces of equipment that you buy, they're for the long term. You know,
look how long I've had these meters. I've had them over 20 years, and they still work. They still do the job they intended. So, you know, like I said, a carpenter has his hammer and saw, and you know, he looks after them and uses them every day. In the same way, we as craftspeople, as cinematographers, as well as artists, these are our tools of trade, and we should use them on a regular basis and hone our craft. And I really think meters can help us hone our craft. And
as you said earlier, you can back this up by complementing this video, endorsing the use of light meters. There are websites. One of the websites.
If you go to the Sekonic website, they've got lots of tutorials. There's some great tutorials which I've watched on how to use your light meter and how to calibrate it. And yeah, I won't go into it because they do a great job.
And there's a lot of cinematographers on social media who I'm sure wouldn't mind.
Yeah, some of the old guys will be happy to, you know, show anyone who doesn't know how to use a light meter, you know, show them how to use it. But the main thing is, you know, set your settings correctly, your frame rate, your ISO, your shutter angle, take a reading, and away you go.
Great.
Yeah.
Con, on when I started doing EPK, I've never actually worked on a feature film, I admit, but done lots of EPK material on feature films. And I remember when they were using arc lights, you know, before the HMIs. But I remember when the DOP had to look, when they were waiting for the sun to come out behind the clouds, and they had that, it was like a giant ND filter basically, where they could actually look at the sun. What is that? Yeah, well, I used to have it in my DP case, but I took it out because I sometimes now just use it for checking clouds. I've put a little like whiteout dot in the middle of it, just so my retina doesn't burn out, so I can check out the you know, when the cloud's going to move out. But in the old days, apparently, what they were used for, they were varying grades, 1, 2 or 3, and there was a black and white viewing filter. So basically it was handicapping your eye, because film stocks weren't very sensitive. If you had 100 ISO film stock and you want to know how the film camera would or the emulsion would see the scene, the lit scene, you would put that in front of your eye to handicap your eye, so you could see, oh, that shadow is very dark. And you go like that, and you go back like that, because your eye would adjust and go back like that. And you see that, like it was like an ND filter, so it show you where you needed to fill in the shadows. And again, for black and white, it always almost looked like a sepia coloured
glass that would more or less show you the tonality.
But we don't need those now.
No, we don't need those now.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I can say about all this is it just gives me an even greater appreciation of those before us who didn't have video playback and monitors and things to check. And I mean, they were true crafts people.
That's right. They were really the DP on set with this half magic golf ball going around taking readings. Everyone was looking at them saying, what the heck are they doing?
And you've got a megastar, you're in Hollywood, you've got Kirk Douglas or something, and production is thousands of dollars an hour.
At the rushes the next day, you didn't want people to be saying, well, you didn't want to say yourself, I think I went too far on underexposure or overexposure. You wanted to nail it, and this helped you nail it. So, but that was part of the excitement and magic of shooting on film. You didn't know what you were going to get till the next day when you went to rushes and you saw what you achieved from the day before, and did you get it right? Did you get it wrong? Did you go too far one way or the other with exposure? And it's a different mystique. Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I would take stills with film.
Yeah.
And dropping off that roll of 24, 36 and asking for doubles or singles or whatever.
Yeah.
And the anticipation,
Yep.
even if they promoted it as a 1 hour lab,
and
you said, look, I'll just go and grab a coffee. And I mean, it was like Christmas. As a kid, it was like, look, the night before Christmas, it was like going to pick up those photos.
We sort of have lost that mystique or excitement about... Yeah, and what about the disappointment when you got, that's out of focus.
I know.
That's underexposed. What was I thinking?
I know.
But, the whole discipline of, you only roll the camera when you rehearsed, when you blocked through, when you absolutely knew you were ready. That was the only time you ever pressed a button to take a photo or to roll the film, because it was expensive. And I think we've lost a lot of that discipline. Now, tape stock or card stock, memory's cheap. Keep rolling, don't stop. Let's just go for another. And sometimes you have 2 or 3 cameras. Now, I think we've lost that discipline, and the poor person in post-production has to wade through all that footage, because feature films haven't gotten longer.
No.
They're still 90 minutes or whatever. So you can't use all that extra footage. Someone still has to make a decision as to what goes in and what goes out. Yeah.
Well, a couple of years ago, I digitised our family archive. I transferred all Super 8 movies, and I've got the film, the negatives, from my parents' drawers, the grandparents' negatives, and I digitised them all. And one thing I noticed was they were very economical, because film was expensive, and one roll of film may have been in the family's camera for a year. It might have just been 3 or 4 photos.
That's true, actually.
Per family event.
Yeah. It's right. And another thing about shooting on film, especially stills film, is that we have an archive. We're all shooting digital now, and archivists are lamenting the fact that people in the future will know nothing about us, because how many people pay attention to backing up their photos or having their photos on the cloud or off-site in case there's a fire or theft? You can lose it all very easily. And do you print photos? I don't print photos.
No.
So, future generations, maybe they'll have videos like this to look at to know what we were like.
Yeah. So, if I haven't got the budget to buy a light meter, new or second hand, and I can't decide which one to get or whatever, is there something as simple as an app you can download?
Yeah, there is a little device that goes into your 3.5mm phono, which has got a little half ball on there, and with a certain app, I forget the name of the app, you can use it as a light meter, and it's just as good. Although there's something about not being interrupted by phone calls while you're taking a meter reading, and having something dedicated as well. But if you're a student and you really don't have budget to buy one of these meters second-hand or brand new, that is a good starting point.
Because I hang on to my old smartphones.
Oh, there you go.
For that reason, just to drive GoPros and pair up with all those mini cameras, etc. And I agree. I think that using a device like that is plugged into the smartphone, it is a risk that you could damage your primary phone. So that's great to know that you can do that though.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Con. I've learnt quite a lot with this discussion.
Thank you, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to get my old meters out and show them off. So if people would like to leave comments below on what they think about light meters and if they use them, if they don't use them, and anything else they'd like to.
Well, there's no shame in not knowing how they work.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And you know, like I said, it's not that hard to learn how to use them. But like anything, they do take practice. And you know, once you get to know and trust your meter, that was the other thing. You know, trusting your meter, you can 100% guarantee that the results you're going to get would be consistent. And that's the other thing that this allows you to be is consistent with your lighting.
Okay, thanks, Con, and thanks for watching.
Thank you, and catch you on the next episode.